Why do we see ghosts? Despite decades of research, no conclusive body of evidence for the paranormal has ever emerged. And yet, Pew Research found that 18% of Americans reported having at least one sighting of a ghost in their lifetimes. That's a staggering number of people who claim to have seen something that science says doesn't exist. But here's the thing, I believe that they saw what they say that they did. I have seen ghosts myself, and I also don't believe that they exist.
What?
How can that be? Well, neuroscience has the answer. Now, paranormal experiences come in many forms. For this video, I'm particularly just going to talk about sightings. Not because neuroscience can't explain any of the others, it's just I'm not making a 1 hour video here. So let's jump in. To unpack how I can see something that I don't actually believe in, we need to understand that seeing doesn't mean what you think it does. We tend to think of vision as something our eyes do, but our eyes don't actually see, they just collect light. The seeing happens in the brain. The brain takes raw sensory information and turns it into something meaningful. In other words, seeing is sensory input plus imagination. For example, when we look at a simple set of two-dimensional lines arranged like this, we immediately perceive a three-dimensional box. There is no depth in the image. The depth is something that your brain adds. Similarly, these are just black shapes in a page, but your brain barely notices the shapes at all. It jumps straight to the meaning.
Ah, reading.
Now, most of the time, this system works beautifully, but optical illusions show us when the brain's assumptions overpower raw data. Take this image of two Rubik's Cubes. Look at the center square on each cube. Which one is blue and which one is yellow? Here's the thing, the answer is neither one. In fact, these two squares are the exact same shade of gray. And even when you know that, they still don't look the same. And that's the important part. Your brain interprets the context of the picture, and given the color surrounding the squares, it determines that the cubes are under different lighting conditions, so it ignores the raw color information and instead asks, what color should this be in context? This is why neuroscientist Dr. Anil Seth describes perception as a controlled hallucination. The brain doesn't passively record data. It is a highly complex pattern recognition software that makes predictions and then checks against sensory input. Most of the time, that process works and gives us an accurate picture of the world. But when information has ambiguity, like visual input in the dark, the brain leans more heavily on prediction and pattern recognition than it does the actual evidence. And this is where ghost sightings begin. Human beings are extremely social creatures, and our brains are exceptionally good at recognizing other humans. Faces, body movement, that pattern recognition software is wired to detect them, even with very little information. That's why coats on doors can look like people, and why something moving in your peripheral vision can instantly feel like a presence. This can also be colored by emotional state, such as stress or fear, which can change the way that we perceive the visual input coming into our eyes. Blah. And here's the bottom line, your brain does not care about being right, it cares about being safe. If you're alone in your house and you see something move out of the corner of your eye, if there's even a small chance that that movement could be a person, then that situation would be out of the ordinary. And out of the ordinary to your brain means potentially dangerous. And so your brain assigns meaning to the ambiguity. You jump, you turn, and you investigate. I also want to be clear, something as small as a bug flying through a dim doorway can trigger this response. Just like your brain turned the color gray into blue and yellow on the Rubik's Cubes, your brain will overestimate the size of the movement in order to make you think something bigger is actually there. Why does it do this? Because there's no downside to being wrong, yet there's huge downside in not investigating a potential threat. And so comes a jump scare. You turn and look, and when nothing is there, your brain corrects the visual error, but it doesn't automatically correct the emotional one, which leaves you feeling really weird because I'm telling you that physically you did see someone moving in the corner of your vision, and now they're not there. And when this happens, you don't immediately think, processing error. You think, but there was someone there just a second ago, I swear. Just like in optical illusions, your brain can physically distort the things that you see if it even senses the potential of there being a threat. And this process can reinforce itself. In places where people expect paranormal activity, or for people who have experienced something like the last situation, the brain becomes more sensitive to ambiguity. The more you believe something is out there, the more often your perception resolves uncertainty in that direction. Over time, this can create a feeling of a haunting or a pattern of experiences that repeats and adds to itself. This is not because there's actually a demonic force out there, but because your brain has learned what to look for. This is called apophenia, and it's a documented psychological phenomenon. During this time, along with changes of perception, the brain also changes your logic flow. In a normal house, a picture falling off a wall is an issue with hanging.
You use tape?
But in a house you're worried is haunted, a picture falling off the wall is immediate confirmation that something out of the ordinary is certainly going on.
What do you want from us?
So if you're experiencing this, take a deep breath. You are not haunted, you are not cursed, you are not being followed. Your brain is just a little more active in its pattern recognition than most. You are seeing, hearing, and experiencing more than everybody else is. But it's not because some demonic force is hell bent on destroying your life. It's because you've unknowingly trained your brain's pattern recognition software to find patterns that scare you. And this same process doesn't just apply to sight, it applies to sound as well, and probably even more so. But that's a story for my next video. In the meantime, if you have questions or if there's another type of paranormal activity that you'd like me to explore, please comment on it below. Thank you so much.